There's a certain threshold an artist crosses where reactions stop sounding like opinions and start sounding like measurements. Brad Pitt crossed that threshold a long time ago. At this stage, when something holds his attention, it's not because it impressed him on the surface, it's because it revealed discipline underneath. His response to Moana 2026 fits squarely into that category. Not admiration shouted from the rooftops, but recognition spoken with precision. What immediately framed his reaction was how he talked about intention, not outcome, not success, intention. He seemed less interested in what the film achieves visually and more invested in what it dares to carry emotionally. In his words, it's a story that knows what it's holding. That idea lingers. Moana 2026 isn't treating its world like a playground that needs constant expansion. It treats it like a legacy that needs care. Pitt's commentary suggested that the film understands something many continuations miss. Growth doesn't always look like escalation. Sometimes it looks like refinement. The ambition here isn't about proving scale. It's about trusting depth. The narrative allows complexity without forcing it into sharp edges. It lets the emotional questions breathe, even when they don't resolve cleanly. That restraint, according to him, is what gives the film its weight. He spoke about how the story feels older, not aged, but seasoned. There's a difference. Moana 2026 doesn't abandon its sense of wonder, but it no longer treats wonder as the destination. It becomes the companion. The film asks quieter questions than its predecessor, and Pitt seemed particularly drawn to that choice. He noted that stories willing to slow down are often the ones most confident in where they're going. One of the more striking parts of his reaction was how he framed the film's emotional rhythm. He didn't describe moments, he described balance. Strength is never presented without consequence. Courage isn't framed as fearlessness. The film allows its central journey to feel earned rather than affirmed. Pitt referred to this as emotional honesty, suggesting that the story doesn't reward characters for being brave, it challenges them to understand why bravery matters. When he touched on the cast, it was with a sense of quiet respect rather than praise-heavy enthusiasm. He spoke about how the performances feel inhabited, not performed. That distinction mattered to him. According to Pitt, you can sense when actors approach a role as responsibility instead of opportunity. The voices don't push for attention, they serve the story's center. That level of commitment, especially in a project carrying cultural resonance, doesn't happen by accident. He acknowledged the weight the cast carries, culturally, emotionally, narratively, and how the film doesn't use that weight as decoration. It's integrated. There's no sense of the story borrowing identity for texture. Instead, it moves with intention, letting character and culture exist as foundation rather than emphasis. Pitt seemed to view this as one of the film's quiet achievements. It doesn't explain itself to be understood. Another layer of his reaction focused on trust. Trust in the audience, trust in the material, trust in silence. Moana 2026 doesn't rush to fill space with reassurance. Pitt suggested that the film allows uncertainty to exist without immediately resolving it, which gives the emotional beats room to resonate. In his view, that kind of storytelling respects the intelligence of the viewer and respects the story enough not to overprotect it. He also spoke briefly about how the film resists nostalgia. It doesn't treat the past as something to replicate or outdo. It treats it as something to stand on. That choice shapes everything, from tone to pacing to character decisions. Pitt framed this as a sign of creative confidence, the willingness to move forward without constantly looking back for validation. What makes his reaction particularly compelling is what he didn't say. There was no language of spectacle, no talk of groundbreaking visuals or defining moments. Instead, there was an emphasis on cohesion, on how every element feels aligned toward the same purpose. Pitt described the film as clear, which, coming from someone known for complex roles, carries significance. Clarity, in this sense, doesn't mean simplicity, it means precision. He seemed especially aware of how difficult it is to maintain emotional sincerity at this scale. Large stories often lose their center trying to accommodate expectation. Moana 2026, in his view, does the opposite. It narrows its focus even as its world expands. That tension between scope and intimacy is where the film finds its voice. Why does this reaction matter? Because it reframes how the film is perceived, not as something designed to impress, but as something designed to endure. Pitt's response doesn't elevate the film through hype, it anchors it through credibility. It suggests that Moana 2026 isn't chasing relevance, it's exercising responsibility. And that shifts expectations. It invites the audience to approach the film differently, not looking for moments to applaud, but moments to absorb. Not asking what's bigger, but what's truer. When someone with Pitt's perspective recognizes that kind of intent, it signals that this story isn't trying to be louder than before, it's trying to be more honest. So the conversation around Moana 2026 changes. It's no longer just about returning to a beloved world. It's about watching a story choose growth over repetition, depth over decoration, and meaning over momentum. If that's the standard being acknowledged here, then the real anticipation isn't about what the film will show us, but about what it will trust us to feel.